Hello there, folks, and welcome to another exciting episode of Swiss Plays Pokemon Crystal Nuzlocke. And we've been doing a little rotating guest thing for this particular series. We've had who have we had on? Oh dear, that's going to sound really rude of me that I've forgotten all the guests we had on. We had Retro Gamer on for the first one. Who did I have on for the second one? Oh dear, that's going to bother me. Then I did a solo one, and now we've got Tom on as well. Hello there, Tom.
Hello.
So as we said off air just before we started, you've watched a little bit of Pokemon before, like you've seen a bit of gameplay of other people playing it, but you've never actually played it yourself. Then
Yeah, that's correct. I've seen people play it, and I've seen you play it during the lockdown years, but I've never personally played it myself.
have you dabbled in any sort of like monster fighting RPGs?
Um, sort of. I think the closest that I can think of off the top of my head is a game that came out last year called Expedition 33.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I don't know whether that counts. I mean, they're vaguely monsters that you fight in it. So, but I
Does it
do.
does it involve having monsters that you battle with, which you can level up to gain new skills or abilities?
Yeah, it does. Like
I'd say it's close enough.
it's basically a game that the gameplay behind it basically is you are a party of four and you progress through the story and an area and you fight monsters and these sort of machine type enemies, and as you defeat them in a turn-based sort of way, you gradually level up and get stronger with time.
Okay, so it's not going to be a totally alien thing to you. This then you've seen enough of it from other games and through osmosis. You're not quite at the Lee Hallam levels of doing the washing up while I do these kinds of streams. Then,
No.
um, so as you're probably aware, but I'll reiterate for the audience, the shtick with this run through of Pokemon is that I'm limited to only catching one Pokemon per area in the game, which does give us a finite number of Pokemon that I can use. And if a Pokemon faints, it's considered dead. So it is indeed perfectly possible for me to be unable to beat the game if I'm careless enough and they all die. And that's part of the fun, that I can sink hours and hours into this only to fuck it up suddenly, and then that's it. We're done. So all of that said, for the dear viewers, I think at the end of the last episode, I caught some more Pokemon. We ended up in the cave on the way to the next. I need to pay attention to what I'm doing here because that isn't a nice amount of health. We ended up in the cave on the way to the next town where we're going to end up going after the next gym. And Lee Ball here in the chat says, "Do Pokemon have an attack called early release?" I think that their attack has been paused for review, Lee. We need to just wait and find out exactly what we're early releasing here. So Tom, what we'd also said before we did this stream, what I was sort of saying about it's kind of just we do the Pokemon, but it's also just a chance to kind of chat about whatever we like along the way as well. And we've already got onto the topic of video games and RPGs, so this is a fairly nice segue here. Something that the two of us do have in common is that we're both quite big fans of the Fallout franchise.
Oh yes, indeed. I very much enjoy the Fallout games. As I said to you but before, I've not played the spin-off games like Brotherhood of Steel, as an example, but I have played 1, 2, 3, 4, and New Vegas.
Oh shit. Okay. Well, you've got a lot more. You've got a lot more of them under your belt than I've got under mine. Then, so my first Fallout game that I ever played actually was New Vegas. So in a way, I started off with what I consider to be the very best one. Everything else, by comparison, has been it's okay, but is it New Vegas? I've played New Vegas. I've played Fallout 3. I've played a very very small amount of Fallout 4, and that's it. I've not played the original two. I've seen maybe a bit like you with Pokemon. I've seen other people play a little bit of the original two, but that's about as far as I've gone with it.
They're extremely different compared to, well, basically, they're kind of split between three four-ish studios. The first Fallout game was made by Interplay all the way back in 1997, believe it or not. Incredibly old game now by today's, and back then it even was quite outdated in terms of graphics, but incredibly old game. Fallout 2 was made by Black Isle Studio, which kind of had people come over from Interplay into it. And they also, I think, were involved in the Baldur's Gate series as well, which is why they kind of inspired between the two. And then all the Fallout games, apart from New Vegas, since then have been made by Bethesda Studios. Um, and
And
Obsidian is the ones who made Fallout New Vegas, and they're also interesting because a lot of the developers who made New Vegas in Obsidian used to also be a part of both Interplay and Black Isle Studios, which is why New Vegas has so many influences from Fallout 2 and Fallout 1.
I was going to say that it's interesting that arguably, well, what a lot of people consider to be the best Fallout game, being New Vegas, had more of the old team from the original ones doing it than all of the other sort of so-called modern Fallout games, being like, Fallout 4, Fallout 76, which have been more sort of in-house Bethesda-y products. That leads me to the conclusion that Bethesda aren't actually as good at making Fallout games as people think they are.
Well, this is the thing, like, it's really heavily debated within the Fallout community, the difference between the two. They're very split between which of the sort of genre of games was better. Because there's the hardcore of the hardcore who played the first two original games, back when they were released even, who are completely convinced that they are the peak of the series and that Bethesda have essentially committed sacrilege against the whole series and ruined it more or less. And then there's the more newer fans who were first introduced to the series through Fallout 3, who basically completely disagree with that, are on the opposite end, and they say no, they're overhated and they've got their good qualities, and that there were some glaring flaws with the first two games that a lot of people ignore because of nostalgia. Um, I'm quite split on it because I enjoyed all of the Fallout games I played apart from four, which I'll get into as to why I didn't like it in a minute. But um, I enjoyed one, two, three, and New Vegas, all pretty equally with each other. And the first two original games, in my opinion, I think that the benefit they have is that they are very much true role playing games. Like, you can pretty much do whatever you can think of doing in them from a story and freedom of choice and player perspective. Like, you can, in the first two Fallout games, you can basically kill everybody in the game and still complete the story. It's perfectly plausible to do that. It's not recommended you do that because it makes the game worse, but you've got that freedom to do that if you want to. And you can pretty much create your own character. And when you create them in a certain way, it really changes the game quite dramatically. Like, for example, if as part of your special attributes, you make your character have an intelligence level of one, they basically are like a caveman in terms of intelligence. Like, they can't even speak properly. And it really sort of changes the game how it's done because a lot of characters will struggle to speak with you and are sort of more aggressive towards you because you are not capable of properly communicating with them. So you have two completely different game experiences based on one attribute.
And there's a lot of there is, I mean, and again, because I've not played much of the first two, I'm going to have to assume this, but there are a lot of stages in the game where you might be able to progress via a different path if you pass like a charisma or a speech check. I'm assuming that's still the case in the first two. It's been the case in the later ones that I've played. And
It does, but the difference between the Bethesda ones and the previous ones is that with the Fallout checks, and I mean speech checks, in order to pass them, it wasn't just based on pure skill as well. A lot of the time, you had to have prior knowledge that you collected in order to even begin to unlock the speech check to begin with. To give one example, this is at the very end of the game, so it is a bit of a spoiler, but at the very end of the game, when you confront the master, who is the main antagonist, who's the master of the super mutants, um, you can actually defeat him through speech. You don't have to fight him in physical combat. You can defeat him through simple speech. But it's very difficult to do because, in order to do it, in addition to having the speech checks, you also need to collect evidence of his super mutants because the Master's ultimate goal is he wants to create a world filled with super mutants because his belief is essentially humanity was destroyed by by the nukes. Everywhere is radioactive, which makes it impossible for humans to live in it. So everyone needs to become a super mutant in order to defeat the radiation and achieve purity and unity. The problem with his plan, however, is that it fails within a generation because all of his super mutants are sterile. They can't breed. So what will end up happening if the Master succeeds is humanity will die out anyway. So his plan is completely doomed to fail from the start. And if you tell him that, he will accept that and he'll accept defeat and will give up essentially and let you win. But you need to collect evidence of the super mutant sterility in order to prove to him that that's correct. You can't just pass a speech check and then instantly win. You need to collect evidence, and the way you go about doing that is through both exploration and completing previous quests that you've done up until that point.
so it's got more sort of it's got more to it than the latter games, where it's just like, oh, you have a speech stat of 90, therefore you've convinced him not to do it. You've actually got to go through sort of narrative in-game elements in order to win via that kind of a path. So, oh yeah. So I can see why that's more sort of feels more sort of realistic or coherent within the game, at least. Oh, excuse me. I want to read a few comments that we've got from people in the chat here as we go as well. So, Lee Hallam, I mentioned him earlier, and he has been summoned. Says, I will start running the hot water as we are playing Pokemon here. Onyx says, I remember the Lego theme, which had an RPG attached to its sets. Each set came with playing cards, and the larger one came with counters, dice, and a rules book. It was called Orient Expedition. Just tangentially here, I've played a few Lego-themed video games before, and I think the first ones I did was Lego. I know you're talking about actual Lego of RPG rules, but the first one I played was the Lego Star Wars ones. They were quite good. I think the best Lego game I've ever played, Lego Lord of the Rings. That, to me, has the biggest feeling world in it. And Retro Gamer is here and says, hi, Swiss, glad I caught this. Is this coincidence, Retro, or did you see the message that I sent you? Because not long before I went live, I messaged you to say, oh, I'm going live soon, but I'd like to get you back on for another episode at some point. Right, Tom, just quickly, I need to run down what I'm actually doing here because I've not been paying attention. So we've made it here to the new town, Azalea Town, I think it is. I need to get into... I can't get into the gym until I've done the Slowpoke Well. I can't get into the Slowpoke Well because there's a dude blocking the Slowpoke Well. Oh, yeah, I need to go here. I need to go chat to this person to let me in. Okay, that's fine. Viewers or Tom, can anyone remember if I've encountered a Pokemon in Route 33 yet?
I don't think I can help on this one.
Lee Ball, you've been here since the start. Did I do a wild encounter in Route 33, the patch of grass just after I got out of the cave? I don't feel like I have, but I'm quite strict with myself here. I want to try and be careful here. I came back through here. I battled the hiker. No, I probably wouldn't have gone in that grass, would I? Okay. So we can try and catch somebody here then. Have you heard that? Oh no, I say have you heard as if I don't already know that you've heard. I'm doing it performatively for the sake of the audience. Hey Tom, given that we've been mentioning Fallout, by chance have you heard that they're doing a remake? Or is it a remake or is it a sequel of Fallout New Vegas? It's one of the two, right?
Remaster is what they're doing.
Remaster.
They're essentially doing to Fallout New Vegas and Fallout 3 what they did to Oblivion, Elder Scrolls Oblivion last year. They released a remaster of that where they basically updated the graphics and made some tweaks to the gameplay, and modernized it essentially, but still kept the same game as it was with all the quests and everything that people liked about Oblivion. I have heard about that, yes, and I am very much looking forward to it with cautious optimism. The reason
I
I'm,
I'll
as
just add quickly. I very, very rarely ever buy quote unquote new games when they're released. I'm set in my old ways, but the very few exceptions I'm willing to make are a remaster of Fallout New Vegas and Grand Theft Auto 6. Those are like the, and probably they'll be like the only new games that I've bought close to their release in close to a decade and a half. But that just shows how much I love Fallout New Vegas. Anyway, go on.
yeah, the reason I'm cautiously optimistic is because everything I loved about Fallout New Vegas, I'll get to experience again with better graphics, and that's always good. But the bit where it makes me cautious is how is the game going to perform? Because whilst I love Fallout New Vegas, it was an incredibly buggy game.
Yes.
The amount of times that the game hard crashed on me was quite incredible. And I even had one time where my save data got corrupted and had to be deleted because it couldn't be accessed anymore. Although that only happened once, to be fair.
I remember I first played it on the Xbox 360, Fallout New Vegas, and just it always crashed on the loading screens. It would always be when I was going from one area to another, and it came up with like posters for New Vegas casinos or whatever, and it just never left the loading screen.
Oh yeah,
And and
that's the one I'm talking about, the freezing.
yeah,
Yeah.
and that juxtaposition between it being probably one of the greatest video games I'd ever played and being annoyed as fuck it kept crashing all the time. But first, right. Anyway, just to intersect from our chat about Fallout here, because we are playing Pokemon. Dear viewers, we have caught ourselves a Rattata on Route 33, and this will actually mean that we will have finally filled out a squad of 6 Pokemon, assuming you include the egg in that as well. Can we have some suggestions for some nicknames, please? I'll throw this over to you as well, Tom. Rattata is a little purple rat that evolves into a slightly bigger brown rat. Do you have any? Onyx wants to call them Richard. I think we've had some fun recently with calling Pokemon by like just regular people names. While we're thinking, Retro Gamer says, just seen it, sounds good, jolly good. Onyx says, remember when Europa Universalis was an actual physical board game? I say semi-sarcastically. Also, I spent Wednesday making a map for one of my Lego sets. And call them Richard in honor of Sharp. Richard Sharp. Should I know who Richard Sharp is?
I don't know who that is myself.
Oh, right. Let me jump over to Google quickly. Here we are. Right. Who is Richard Sharp? Richard Sharp is he's a series. There's Sharp is a series of historical fiction novels by Bernard Cornwell centered on the character of English soldier Richard Sharp. Well, now we know. Now we know. Oh, and Lee Hallam has added Sean Bean was played Sharp. Oh, well, this is a whole area that I've got no knowledge about. Okay, so we've got Richard Passions here for Richard Sharp, played by Sean Bean. Lee Hallam had also said Bob. Retro Gamer has said Nibbler, which has a good little, relates to being a little rat sort of thing. Tom, have you got anything else to throw in the mix? And then what I usually do is I just kind of come up with some sort of an amalgamation of everything, or I ignore them all entirely and do my own one.
I'm gonna go with Remy. And the reason and the
Right, sorry,
reason for
that. Right. There's I need to. Okay, I try not to talk about anything too identifiable about my job here, but I've started, so I shall finish, as they say. There's a child in my workplace with that you've just reminded me of. That's sometimes it's difficult, my job. That's all. That's all I'm gonna say. Right? Okay, go on. Why did you pick Remy?
I was hoping people would get the reference, but basically the reason I call it Remy is basically a name of the rat from the movie Ratatouille.
You know what? That's first of all, that's a good little relation there to the rat theme. Secondly, fun bit of trivia. I used to deliberately troll my siblings by always calling the rat from Ratatouille, and feigning total ignorance that his name was Remy, and going, no, his name's Ratatouille. That's his name's on the name of the film. It's a film all about Ratatouille the rat. And what I loved is because, like, online from time to time, people would falsely think that the rat was called Ratatouille anyway. So I'd bring up, like, people calling the rat Ratatouille as so-called evidence that the rat was called Ratatouille. And it amused me. I don't think it amused them, but it amused me to call him Ratatouille all the time. Just quickly, right, Onyx says Linguin. Liebel says Sharp made Bean famous. No Boromir or Ned without Sharp. Oh, shit. Okay. So this is like, the origin role in a way for Sean Bean. And he says, "Are you winning, son?" Well, we've been naming a rat for the last 3 minutes, but we might start winning soon. Okay, so we've got variations of Remy, Bob, Nibbler, Richard Sharp, Sean Bean. What are we gonna go here? You know what? I think it's going to have to be Sean Bean. It's actually going to just have to be Sean Bean. That feels like the best that I've got out of this whole interaction here. It's Sean Bean the Rattata, everybody. Now, nobody make any jokes about the amount of things that Sean Bean appears in that his characters die in. We don't want that for a Nuzlocke. We're not having it. Sean Bean the Rattata will be with us until the very end. But I'm going to go heal him, just to be sure.
Oh, boy.
Onyx adds, also a very young Daniel Craig appeared in a Sharp episode, and Patrick Troughton's son too. And then he says, what's the connection between rats and Sean Bean? Well, look, NA, if you leave a bunch of beans out on the floor, the rats will come and gnaw at them. That works, right? I don't know. Someone wanted to call it after the character Richard Sharp, and then we discovered that he was played by Sean Bean, and then we started talking about Sean Bean. Sean Bean doesn't even resemble a rat. I like Sean Bean, but nonetheless, we now have a rat-a-tat called Sean Bean. That is where we're at with this. And what are the other names? Baritma, Shifty, Egg, Rick Johnson. That one was gold because that fucking amuses me every time I read it. Going, yeah, Rick Johnson. And Nobby. I'm easily amused here. All right. Anyway, into the cave. Slowpoke Well. Slowpoke Well, guys. I think this counts as its own area again, doesn't it? Because it's got its own little name that came up at the bottom. I think we can catch someone in here if we really want. Oh, Oh dearie me. Speaking of Sean Bean, Tom, did you watch Game of Thrones? Did you watch all of Game of Thrones?
No, I actually haven't. I do know about Sean Bean though, because he's essentially been in so many different things. But no, I've not watched Game of Thrones. No.
I Game of Thrones was one of those shows that a bit like Breaking Bad and other stuff that I was naturally resistant to wanting to watch purely because so many people went, "Oh, it's amazing. Oh, why haven't you seen it yet? Oh, you've got to see it." Part of me resisted wanting to see it because I thought, well, I don't want to watch it just because you're all telling me to watch it. Once I finally did watch it and I got into it, I did realize why everyone was hyping it up so much, because I think it was a really quality show. Fantastic sort of world building and all that kind of stuff. Unfortunately, the first 4 seasons, absolute quality, some of the best television, all of the rest of that, started to fall off in the final few seasons and did a great big shit on itself in the season finale. So I would recommend watching it, but I would say watch it with your eyes open, that you're going to really enjoy it for a while and then it's going to disappoint you.
That sounds quite a lot like an old TV show that I watched a very long time ago called House of Cards, because that had a similar outcome to it as well.
Yes. I watched House of Cards and I would agree with you. First season, solid as fuck. Next few seasons, yeah, still pretty good. Fell off.
Yeah, like season one of House of Cards was amazing. Season two was not as good, but still pretty solid. Season three, it began to falter, and then season four was just absolute terrible tier in every way imaginable. I
Was
mean, it
season
didn't.
4 the one where because obviously Kevin Spacey had all of that stuff with like people making allegations against him, and he was dropped by Netflix. So was that was the one where Claire Underwood sort of headed the final season?
No, she was
Oh,
season six because there was six of
oh,
them.
oh,
Like four and five really began to fall off in quality and really began to show how bad the show was getting. And then season six was just absolute abysmal TV quality in every way, shape, or form. I think that season six of House of Cards, some of the lowest rated TV show in all of TV history. Like, if you check its IMDb rating, it's consistently like 4 out of 10 stars. It's that
I mean,
badly
I,
rated.
I mean, it was quite a few years back now, as you can tell, because I forgot how many seasons there were of the show. But when I watched the final season, it very much was kind of, well, I want to see how it ends. But I was very much aware of the fact that I wasn't really enjoying it as I watched it. Let me do a few comments here as well. The reference was a conversation Richard Sharp was having with a young soldier about the forlorn hope. The phrase rat-a-tat-tat was mentioned. Oh, okay. So that's why you linked that into rat-a-tat. Right. Well, there's your answer then. That's where that came into it, and then finally we got Sean Bean. NA says most people don't talk about the politicking in Game of Thrones. That's some of the most engaging stuff, in my opinion. I mean, there's a lot of different elements to Game of Thrones that I like, but the whole sort of, yes, that sort of struggle for power and the sort of, in a way, although it's set in medieval times, it could easily be a House of Cards type show as well. That it's a bunch of people in powerful positions with different alliances and backstabbing each other and trying to line up their own little plans against one another. That's why the first few seasons of Game of Thrones were so tight, in my opinion, because it really did that stuff well. And then towards the end, it was just, we've all got to kill each other now. Bye. And A says, have you seen House of the Dragon? I've seen the first couple seasons of House of the Dragon, and I think it's all right. It's good. I'm not crazy on it. I don't think it's quite as good as the earlier seasons Game of Thrones, but it's all right. And it's interesting seeing Matt Smith in a wig. And yes, Lee Hallam. We always say this whenever House of Cards gets mentioned. You're always like, "Oh, it's not the original British House of Cards," and yes, indeed, the American House of Cards. Onyx adds, I didn't watch Game of Thrones because of its reputation for having nudity and sex in. I just don't personally like that in TV shows, so I never touched the show. And in fairness, Onyx, that reputation is well earned. Certainly in the earlier seasons, there's a lot more of that. From what I remember, and I could be wrong, from what I remember, the later seasons, they sort of toned that down a bit. But by the time you get to the later seasons, the show's not very good anymore. And I'm not even trying to say that's because of the lack of sex and nudity. It's just the way that it ended up. Lee says, British original free series of 4 episodes, and not surprised it was stretched out by the Yanks. NA says, I guess you liked Breaking Bad. Ooh, Breaking Bad. Okay, we'll get on to Breaking Bad as well then. Tom, I'll throw it over to you first. Have you seen Breaking Bad?
Oh yes, I've seen it all from start to finish, and quite a few times as well.
And are you of the sort of, mainstream opinion that I and probably most others share that, yes, quality TV show, very, very good?
Yep, pretty much. Extremely good TV show, incredibly well written, and also well directed as well. I mean, even down to the clothing and colours that the actors wear all have a meaning behind them within the TV show. So yeah, it's very, very, very good.
I've seen that as well, like video essays on YouTube with like the whole color scheme stuff, and like Marie always wearing purple and other bits to do with that, which I think is the one thing I hear from people who say that they don't really like Breaking Bad is that they gave up after the first couple of seasons, that they weren't really feeling it. And the thing with Breaking Bad is that there is sort of quite a tonal shift after the first couple of seasons. The first couple of seasons is more sort of, it almost feels a little bit like a comedy, like a dark or black comedy with other elements in it. And then as you get to the later seasons, it ends up sort of like, crime thriller. But it's a slow burn transition to get there.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, I didn't have much of a problem with that because I always saw it as that being the point. I mean, Vince Gilligan did say when he was creating the show that he wanted to create a TV show where the overall point of it was to have a guy go from Mr. Chips to Scarface. And I think that he did eventually achieve that goal and he did it very well because with Walter White, a lot of the complaints I've seen people also make, one of them I've seen, is that people think that Walter White's transformation into Heisenberg is too much of a heel turn compared to what it was like in the earlier seasons. But I think a lot of people miss that Walter White always had Heisenberg in him. Like, he always had that inner darkness within him. He just never had that kick to unleash it until he developed lung cancer and then began to move towards meth cooking in the end.
It's sort of like it was a you know what, there's a phrase I heard recently that stuck with me. Actually, it was on a completely different topic. It was all about psychopaths and sociopaths and serial killers and stuff, so a bit different from Walter White. But someone was explaining sort of like how it is that these kind of people come about, and they said something like nature, what was it, nature loads nature and nurture, no, but it was nature loads the gun and nurture fires it. And it was the idea that you can have the building blocks inside of you for the potential to become a certain kind of person or to do certain things, but then it's through experiences and circumstance and lived events that then shape you into the person that you are. And that makes a lot of sense to me, I think. And that's probably a good analogy for the Walter White thing as well, that he had that sort of potential within him, but for a large amount of his life, he just hadn't been within the circumstances for that sort of side of him to manifest.
Yeah, that's pretty much the case. Like, there's various points throughout the show where it really does highlight that Walter White isn't really taking this massive transformation in his personality out of nowhere, but rather the demons that was always inside of him has been unleashed thanks to circumstances, and now he's beginning to live out who he truly has always been throughout his entire life.
And do you think as well, though, as far as his character goes, there's probably a little bit of an element there of also, well, fuck it, I've got cancer. There's a good chance I'll be dead soon. Why not lean into this and go as far as I can? Because what's the downside? I know that's never explicitly said within the show, but I've always thought of that. That's got to be part of the motivation there as well. That you start taking the limits off when you know, oh, okay, I'm no longer staring down the barrel of what I'm doing for the rest of my life now. My time is short. I can go out there and do more things that I never would normally do. And in this situation, it's become a meth empire guy.
That was part of the motivation, I think, at the very beginning, but gradually over time, you begin to sort of realize that that isn't the case, and that he's sort of doing it for himself. And the moments where that happen is that confirm that in my view are towards the very beginning of the series, the couple that he used to work with at Grey Matter, Gretchen and Elliot, offer him the ability to get his old job back at Grey Matter and fully pay for his cancer treatment, but he rejects it completely. And then when his cancer goes into remission, I think it was in season 2 where that happened. He still carries on cooking meth even though he doesn't need to do so anymore. And that also gets proven when he makes enough money to pay for all of his treatment, but also to take care of his family, but he still carries on cooking. And when he tries to not tries, he succeeds in taking down Gus Fring. Even though the deal he offers, 3 million for 3 months, is more than enough of what he needs, like each and every time throughout the series, he's offered a way to escape the life. But each and every time he turns it down because eventually you begin to realize, and I think this is made especially clear by the time season 5 rolls around, that Walt isn't doing this because of his cancer or because of his family. He's doing it because he wants to do it, because he wants to basically stroke his ego at the end of the day. And that he wants to create this meth empire for the sake of creating it, and in order to satisfy his desire to be powerful and strong and to do something that of his life separate from others, to not live in the shadow of other people and be his own man, essentially. At least that's the way he sees it.
And that's probably why, in a way, a lot of that transformation into Heisenberg does a lot of people see it as culminating in that scene where he says to the guy when they're out meeting in the desert, "Say my name." Make him say that he's Heisenberg, because it's like the ultimate ego stroke, but it's also confirming to Walt basically, right, I've made it. I'm now a guy that can literally beat other guys with the power of my own words and make them do what I want them to do just because of the reputation I've managed to build.
Yeah, it's like at that point he sort of gets the thing that he's always wanted, which is respect on his own merits rather than living in other people's shadow and being tied to and people claiming his achievements as their own, essentially.
You know what? It has been a good episode to get you on as a guest, because although we have largely ignored the Pokemon, I've had to do battle after battle after battle of just a bunch of Team Rocket grunts at the moment, which probably wouldn't have been that exciting to discuss anyway. So I feel like I'm getting through some boring gameplay in this episode before I get to the more interesting stuff in Pokemon, and we've managed to distract ourselves with talking about prestige quality television shows. Let me
Yeah.
read a few more comments that we've got from people here. Cameron's got one that I'm going to save for a moment because that one might be fun.
I've seen this one, yes.
Yeah. Onyx.
there is There is actually a funny point that's being
Yeah,
made
I
there,
know.
so we'll get
I've
onto
been
it
thinking
later.
it over ever since I first read it. Onyx says people forget the post-apocalyptic undertones that good fantasy works have. The great empire stroke realm generally has either fallen or is in deep decline during the present day of any fantasy world. Ancient Greek mythology was self-consciously post-apocalyptic since the Hellenes lived in the shadow of the fallen Bronze Age Mycenaean civilization dominated by the so-called Cyclopean wolves. I don't have too much to add to that because I've not thought a great deal on it, other than to say, yes, I have. I'm thinking of it. I have noticed that in fantasy shows that there will be sort of a world before some, more ancient things that used to exist which are no longer there, which the present day is sort of layered on top of. NA adds most people are capable of crazy and messed up stuff. They aren't typically pushed to the point where it's necessary. Obviously, with Walter White, it's much more intricate and intelligent than your average Joe. No one really knows what they're capable of until they are pushed into extreme situations. And also adds, you're doing well not to kill your Pokemon while talking. Yes, I'm pleasantly surprised how that's gone so far today as well. But finally, Tom, we come to the Cameron comment here. Cameron says, can you discuss the importance of Shrek to the remigration movement? well, you see, about
The
20,
reason for that is because basically Cameron earlier today posted a screenshot of a thumbnail of some right wing grifter YouTuber who uploaded a video saying something like Lord Farquhar was secretly based, and then it just said Lord Farquhar did nothing wrong. And the whole premise of the video is basically because Lord Farquhar wants to mass deport all the people he doesn't like into Shrek Swamp, that is proof that he's based and that it is remigration propaganda, which is a good thing according to that YouTuber. It's just the typical. It's basically rip off critical drinker stuff. Like
I
essentially typical slop grifting nonsense.
see. I was gonna riff on that from the completely opposite direction. Right, I hadn't even thought about someone trying to go, oh yeah, Farquaad kicked a bunch of them out there for based remigration right winger or whatever. I'd thought about it on Shrek being on the receiving end of going, Shrek's living his lovely peaceful life in the swamp when suddenly a bunch of refugees arrive at his door. And then he's going, well, I don't want all of them in my swamp. And then Shrek wants to remigrate them out. But, two sides of the same coin, I suppose.
Oh, but the reason
Uh,
why they focus on Farquhar rather than Shrek is because Shrek in that instance is portrayed as small-minded and in a negative light in that particular case. And the show is about him overcoming that and becoming more accepting of those people.
it's about him,
They
him learning to coexist with, realizing that he doesn't just want to be in his swamp by himself, but actually he might enjoy being around other people if he gives them a chance.
Yeah, and that's why the right wing people, especially this YouTuber that Cameron linked, doesn't like him. Because that's why they like Lord Farquhar instead, because he's based remigration right winger, standing up for his country in it.
And and all of this being so, it's also worth mentioning that the character of Lord Farquaad himself was a very clever way of the people at DreamWorks to be able to smuggle the word fuckwad about 40 times
Yes.
into a film for children.
Yes, that is also why it was called that. And the other thing that was also mentioned at the end of the video is that Duloc is portrayed as like, according to them anyway, as a clean, law-abiding society. But after Farquaad's death, it becomes a desolate ruin, and so that is proof that Farquaad did nothing wrong and is based, according
So
to this
so
YouTuber.
are you saying then that we shouldn't have invaded Iraq and we should have kept Saddam in place? Is that what you're saying, Tom? That when once Farquaad's out of the equation, ISIS moves in. Is that what you're saying? That may not be what you're saying.
Oh no, it's not what I'm saying. It's just that's what these YouTube grifters are saying, basically.
Let's read a few more of the comments here. Onyx says Shrek was the Monty Python of animated movies, and in my opinion, that's not a good thing because it meant that a sincere fairy tale movie was basically impossible in a post-Shrek world. Oh, okay. Interesting view there. When you say the Monty Python of animated movies, and you're saying that because of Shrek that wasn't possible, what's your view of Monty Python then making not possible? Then, like, what did Monty Python come along and do, which then became impossible for other people to do in the same kind of way again? If you're saying Shrek is the version of that, I'd be interested to know. Yep, here's Cameron. Duloc is a clean, law-abiding society. After Farquaad's death, it becomes a desolate ruin. Onyx says, of all movies I've seen, my opinion on Shrek is basically Peter Hitchens' opinion on Monty Python. Onyx, you've got some very strong views about the film Shrek here. It's got to be said. To be comparing yourself to Peter Hitchens in any kind of a way. Because Peter Hitchens is famously the guy who goes, oh, everything's terrible now. It's all terrible. Nothing's proper anymore. It's all terrible. Everything. And I've been saying it for years and no one's listened to me. Also, Farquaad says, some of you may die, but it's a sacrifice I'm willing to make. What was I doing there? There was a whole bit that I was going to riff on Shrek and all the rest of it, but I think I'm over that one now. I'm interested though what Onyx has to say about this whole Shrek doing to animated films what Monty Python did to something though. What that train of thought leads to. Here's a quick one, just while we're talking about fantasy fairy tale type themed films. Have you ever seen the film Hoodwinked?
No, not seen that one.
It's a little gem of a film that gets completely overlooked to the point that I saw it like when I was a kid and then I forgot it existed. And then I just so happened to watch it again when I was in university, like sat in a living room with a bunch of mates, and we all found it fucking hilarious. And it never really gets brought into a conversation. And I think like about quality sort of animated fairy tale films and all the rest of it, partly because I think that the animation isn't, it's not DreamWorks or Pixar quality animation. It does look a little bit cheaper and a little bit rougher around the edges, but the comedy is fucking good. It's a funny film. It's kind of like a spin on Little Red Riding Hood. It's got lots of the characters from the Red Riding Hood story, but they've all been thrown into a different kind of situation, and it's kind of like a whodunit kind of thing, where they're trying to solve a crime. But that was just throwing that by, dear viewers. If you've never seen Hoodwinked and you're looking for something new to go watch, give it a try. That and The Emperor's New Groove. I can't talk highly enough of The Emperor's New Groove while we're stumbling into to children's films that could also be enjoyed by adults. I'll read this one from Onyx here. Onyx had said, Monty Python basically made being a 100% sincere Briton impossible without mean-spirited Yankee-style mockery dressed as self-deprecation. Ooh, let me think that over for a second then. So you're saying that sort of Monty Python came along, and then after that, sort of like the persona of what it was to be British in a way shifted because of Monty Python. Is that what you also see? Having only ever grown up in a post Monty Python world, Onyx, I could only glimpse at what existed beforehand. Was this the world of stiff upper lips and keeping calm and carrying on, making way for silly walks? Is that kind of what we're driving at here? Because that does sound very Peter Hitchens, I'll be honest with you. I will get back to playing the Pokemon in a second, by the way. Cameron says Shrek's journey throughout the movies can be summed up by John Lennon's Imagine. Come on now. Come on. How much fucking right-wing grifting are we going to be referencing in this stream today? Can be summed up by John Lennon's Imagine. Bring back the bloodthirsty ogre that everybody fears. And Onyx adds, Shrek so thoroughly lampooned fairy tale tropes, it basically made the death of the fairy tale movie a fait accompli. Okay, so there's a question then. Something coming along and parodying its source material so well and efficiently that it actually then shifts the way that stuff is done, or makes it impossible to do that sort of thing again, or does it better than any of the other stuff it did it. I suppose then to try and test that proposition, we need to ask ourselves, have there been any successful fantasy themed films and franchises since Shrek that have actually played things relatively straight? I would guess that maybe some of like the Disney Pixar films are still along those kinds of a line. But then again, I'm grasping a little bit because I've not really seen them. I've not really watched much Disney Pixar in the last little while, but I know there's still lots of films that they do about, you know, different kinds of princesses doing different sorts of things. The closest movie would be Tangled post Shrek, says Onyx. Yes, I've not seen that either, so I can't really comment on that one. But speaking again, tangentially is my word of the day today. Tangentially to what you just said. I watched a video essay a few weeks back about how the Austin Powers franchise managed to and the character of Dr. Evil managed to sort of build upon and then supersede the stuff that it was parodying in the first place. That there was a character from like James Bond films, and it was like, you know, a dude with a cat and you know, a shaved head and, you know, super evil genius and everything. And it not only did it sort of point out the ridiculous of that character and build on it in the parody franchise of Austin Powers, but actually the fact is I can't even tell you what that guy's name was. But I can tell you who Dr. Evil is. And we all know Dr. Evil. And if someone turns around in a chair stroking a cat in a film, you're no longer instantly thinking of, oh, they're parodying that James Bond character. You're going, it's Dr. Evil. But then the question would be, does that, you know, could we say that Austin Powers had ruined the parody of that kind of a thing for forever? And it's like, I don't know. Maybe it pushed it further than it's ever been pushed before, but then you've still had successful sort of spy, Secret Service-y comedy. I mean, like Kingsman. The Kingsman films were pretty successful, and they riff on that same kind of thing in a way. I've also not been paying attention to the Pokemon here, Tom. We made it out of the cave. I'm back I'm out of the cave. I'm in Kurt's house. I acted like a real hero at the well. Well, little Timmy fell down, and I couldn't just walk by. He'd be honoured to make balls for a trainer like me. and he's given me the lure ball. Thank you. Oh yeah, I'm also called Swash in this rather than Swiss, just because. Just because. And A says, I think Tom has an interest in. As I think Tom has an interest in Russia, I'd recommend a Russian film, The Return.
Well, I've not heard of that before. Despite my interest in Russia, there's not too many Russian films, at least domestically made, that I've seen. The only ones I can think of off the top of my head is Brat, or as it's called in English, Brother and Brother 2, which is quite an interesting sort of Soviet film. Well, not Soviet film because it was made in Russia after the Soviet Union fell, but a Soviet-influenced film. And reason it's interesting, amongst other things, is that it actually served as the inspiration for GTA 4. If you watch that film, there is a lot, especially the second one. There is a lot of inspiration taken. Well, GTA 4 was inspired quite heavily by it. And the other films I've watched that are Russian made is Come and See, which is a film that's definitely not for the faint of heart because the basic premise of that film is it's a film set during the German occupation of the Belarusian Soviet Socialist Republic during
Oh,
World War Two.
I don't think I've seen the film, but I might have seen images or clips from it. Is there like a thing about like there's like a kid or a teenager or something, but he looks absolutely gaunt, like just completely and utterly destroyed by all the events around him or something. I,
Yeah, it's
is
that
that? I
one.
think I've seen that of it. Yeah.
I think his name's Fiora, or Fedora. But yeah, he's basically a Belarusian partisan who's been recruited at a very young age because I think his village is attacked by German troops and burnt down as part of not Russian, German pacification operations at the time. But yeah, a lot of people haven't seen it, but people have definitely seen clips of it because it's really famous. One of the most famous Soviet films ever made. And the reason for that is because up until this point, nobody had really depicted what the German occupation of the parts of the Soviet Union was actually like. And that was one of the first mainstream attempts of it actually being done, which is why it's so famous. But it's not a film for the faint of heart. It's not a super gory film, but the violence it does show is very subdued but incredibly dark. If that makes any sense.
Yeah, that it sort of it can sort of resonate with you emotionally, even if it's not like a gore fest like some horror slasher film or something.
Yeah, basically, that's the best sort of way to describe it. It's not a gory or gratuitously violent film, but when it does show violence, it is very much something that sort of sticks with you long after it's finished because of the implications of what's being done, but also because it's something that actually did happen in real life. In fact, I think the guy who directed the film straight up lived through the Nazi occupation of Belarus during World War Two, and he said that he had to actually tone down what had happened because if he had shown in full what had actually happened during the occupation, then no country in the world would have shown it because it would have been banned in every country because of how violent it would have been. So yeah, it's not for the faint of heart, that film.
Well,
It's something you can only really watch in full once and then never really watch it again because it's just too horrible to watch afterwards.
as we come to the end of today's episode of Pokemon, that's a hell of a tone for us to be leaving ourselves on. The horrible atrocities of World War Two. But nonetheless, I try and keep these to about an hour apiece, and I think now is a good enough time to break. So I just want to recap for the viewers. This has been the most Pokemon light episode of the Pokemon Nuzlocke series so far, but I would have expected nothing less from getting Tom on as a guest. I think we've done well. You know, when I sort of said these kind of streams, we just sort of riff and we follow whatever the course of conversation goes. An hour has flown by, hasn't it? You just go from thing
Oh
to thing
yeah.
to thing to thing, and there we are. So it's probably been quite helpful in a way that I've been on autopilot, but it's actually worked for me. Nobody has died in this episode, which is pretty darn good, I'd say. And we're now on the cusp of fighting the next gym, and we've got another rival battle to come as well. So I think finishing up this episode, we are in probably the best shape we could be at this point in time. Um, a couple of weaklings on the team, but hey, the egg's getting close to hatching. We're nearly there. Looking pretty good. Right, I'm going to leave it there for today then. Anyway, So, Tom, I want to say a big thank you for coming on as my guest for today's episode of the Pokemon stream, and to the dear viewers as well. Drop the stream a like if you've enjoyed it, and as seems to be the rough sort of pattern of me doing these, I'm averaging about one a month at the moment. So I'll see you guys again in early September for the next installment. And at that rate, we're not gonna. If we do end up beating this game, it's probably going to be about 2028 by the time that we do it. But there we are. All right then. Any final words to the dear viewers, Tom?
No, not really, other than I've quite enjoyed this episode a lot. Never really get the chance to talk about pop culture stuff all that much on the channel. So it's quite refreshing to do it, and it makes a big change from politics. So yeah, I've really enjoyed this. It's been fun.
Good. I'm glad you have. Well, as I say, what I'm thinking of doing for this particular Nuzlocke series, compared to the other ones, it was always just me doing it. But this one, I'm kind of doing a rotating thing of guests, really, just for a lot of chop and change and variation. So in about 4 or 5 episodes' time, I'll get you back on again if you'd like.
Oh, happily, yeah. I'm always available anytime for these kind of things. So yeah, definitely.
Nice one. And final word to NA says Clacton first, of course. No, don't you worry, NA. Don't you worry. When I said I'll see you again in early September, I know I disappear for long amounts of time without any warning. I'll see you again early September for Pokemon. We'll be back for Clacton next week. Don't you worry.
Wait, is Clacton next week? I thought it was this week.
No, Clacton's next week. Clacton is
oh
next
right,
week.
okay.
Because I know because I booked the day off work for it, so I'm off work next.
Right, okay.
Well, this coming Friday, so it's on Thursday. Yeah. All right then. See you later, guys. Ta-ta.
Goodbye.